Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Woodman and I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to talk about ways we can combat disinformation. Throughout this video set series, we have learned the history of disinformation and the tactics bad actors use to shape narratives about specific groups of people and sow divisions. Now we are going to go over ways we can combat disinformation so it does not keep perpetuating. After all, it is not enough for one person to disprove disinformation. It requires all of us to be united in sharing the truth with each other, which is how we build a sense of community. Let's start with online behavior. The best way to recognize disinformation on the internet is to be constantly on the lookout for it. Here's how to do this. 1. Be aware that a significant number of accounts on social media are fake, where there are a bunch of bots, trolls, and sock puppet accounts, which is an online identity used to deceive people. 2. Never make assumptions about who is operating an online account. Operators keep getting better at hiding their true identities and appearing to be someone they are not. Someone who you think is a political activist you agree with may just be in the confidence building stage of the disinformation campaign. 3. Disinformation artists sometimes try to impersonate reputable sources by putting a familiar logo or brand on falsified information. 4. Sock puppet accounts often reply to each other and agree with each other to make false information appear credible. 5. Watch for genuine information being deceptively manipulated. For example, in 2019, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi was recorded giving a speech. Someone manipulated the speech to make her sound drunk and was widely shared on social media. 6. Be careful not to share or amplify information if the source or content is questionable. Just move past it. We have to work on improving our education to teach people how to combat disinformation. Let's look at an example in Finland. Finland, which declared independence from Russia in 1917, is on the front line of the disinformation war. Kari Kivian, head teacher at Finnish secondary school, said, quote, "In math, we teach our students how easy it is to lie with statistics. In art, they see how an image's meaning can be manipulated. In history, they analyze notable propaganda campaigns. Language teachers show how words can be used to confuse, mislead, and deceive. The goal is active, responsible citizens and voters. We are not taking the curriculum to primary schools. Fairy tales work well. Take the Willy Fox who always cheats on other animals with his sly words. That is not a bad metaphor for a certain kind of politician, is it?" Unquote. This is something to be mindful of since Finland wants to ensure people are educated in combating disinformation. Another thing we can do is support good journalism. After all, journalists are the ones reporting on what our political leaders are doing and holding them accountable. Here are some ways you can approach this. 1. Subscribe to journals and newspapers that do good investigative reporting. Investigative reporters are on the front lines in the war for truth. If everyone supports good journalism, money will get pumped into good reporting. Without an influx of money, journalists are forced to rely on clicks and views by putting out sensationalist articles, which do not lend itself to good journalism. 2. If your area has a local newspaper or station, support it. Listen or watch their broadcasts and read their newspapers. Those are the news organizations dedicated to reporting on what goes on in your local area. 3. If you cannot afford to subscribe or donate, you can still support good journalism online by commenting, liking, and sharing solid reporting. 4. If an otherwise solid newspaper runs a headline you do not like or publishes an article you disagree with, do not immediately cancel your subscription. Instead, you can write a letter to the editor since editors listen to their readers. Keep in mind that disagreeing with an article does not automatically mean the article is false, but instead means you disagree with an article's opinion or perspective on a subject. So think carefully why you have a problem with an article and how you want to respond to it. Speaking of journalists, we also have to re-educate journalists and journalism students on how to report the news when one politician or elected leader is deliberately and habitually lying. Leigh Rawson, professor of journalism at New York University, said, quote, "The current practices of the American press rest on buried assumptions about how presidents of both parties will behave. those assumptions do not apply to a leader who deliberately and habitually lies. To verify is to take a truth claim and nail it down with facts, data, documents, and interviews. Verification in reverse is when a politician takes a known fact and publicly doubts it. This creates controversy and excitement. This is how Trump launched his candidacy with the Obama birth certificate issue. The fire hose of falsehood method thus attacks journalism at its weakest point. And it is working. It erodes trust on all sides, persuades people they are not getting the truth, repeals all but the most determined listeners, and turns politics into ugliness. Unquote. This statement emphasizes how journalists cannot always assume that politicians will tell them the truth, since they will do their best to convey information that paints them in the best light, even if it means lying to people. Journalists need to do their research on the relevant subject before reporting on something, instead of only relying on what politicians and other public officials say. This is so the journalists are not just repeating what the politicians are saying, and journalists can be the watchdogs that hold our government and institutions accountable. We need to pay attention to false equivalence, which is a type of flawed reasoning. People are told that two things have equal weight when in fact they do not. For example, after President Trump started what is known as a trade war by putting tariffs on Chinese goods, which economists agree would raise prices for American consumers, Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas made a public statement. He said, quote, "The president starting a trade war is nothing like soldiers having to go into battle," unquote. We have to be mindful of these kinds of statements when people make comparisons like these. Appeals to emotions are often a sign of a leadership cult. Democracy, in contrast, must be grounded in facts. Watch out for people who are bolstering your fears and promising to make you feel safe. Here is an example of this. Person A says, quote, "Something bad is happening. Something dangerous is going on," unquote. Person B says, quote, "What are you going to do to protect us?" unquote. Person A responds, quote, "You know what? You are not going to be scared anymore. They are going to be scared," unquote. Statements like these are meant to get you to make decisions solely based on your emotions. Whataboutism is a ploy for changing the subject and diverting our attention away from the truth. Here's an example of this. Person C says, quote, "All citizens should have the right to purchase military-style assault weapons," unquote. Person D says, quote, "Don't children have a right to go to school without worrying about a violent attack?" unquote. Person C responds, quote, "What about the rights of people to defend their homes? Do you want to deny people that right? What about criminals who get guns? What about the Constitution? What about individual rights? What about freedom? What about liberty?" unquote. As you can see here, saying, quote, "What about this?" unquote, or, quote, "What about that?" quote, does not actually address the concern someone brings up. In this example, doing whataboutism does not answer the question on if children have a right to go to school without worrying about a violent attack. Whataboutism just distracts you and devalues your concern. You either have to redirect the person back to your specific question or stop engaging with the person. Otherwise, once you engage with whataboutism, it just lets the other person get away with not answering your question. Be aware of a leader who governs by creating constant spectacle as a way to keep people confused, off balance, and unable to focus long enough to discern truth from lies. Here's an example of this. At 8 o'clock a.m., the president is hinting at a nuclear war with a foreign country. At 10 o'clock a.m., the president ordered 2 journalists expelled from the press conference. At noon, the president launched verbal attacks against 3 governors. At 3 o'clock p.m., the president claims that his predecessor, the former president, committed crimes, and the president is urging the attorney general to investigate. At 9 o'clock p.m., the president fired the attorney general. At this point, the reader will give up because there is no way to know what is going on. As much as it looks like so much is happening in the world, never give up on your efforts to learn the truth. If the truth is obliterated, so will democracy. If you feel confused, pick one topic at a time and do your research into seeing what is going on there. Do not let a new situation distract you from investigating the topic you were already looking into. This is so you are not all over the place. We need to focus on believing in the truth, especially if it goes against things we want to hear. Timothy Snyder, the Richard C. Levin Professor of History at Yale University and permanent fellow at the Institute for Human Sciences in Vienna, is an expert in authoritarian regimes. He said, quote, "Believe in the truth. You submit to tyranny when you renounce the difference between what you want to hear and what is the case. This renunciation can feel pleasant, but the result is your demise as an individual and thus the collapse of any system that depends on individualism. Unquote. This means we should not always be looking for information that feels comfortable to us and blindly follow what someone else says without verifying the information. When we only let others decide what is true or false, we give up our control as individuals to verify that the information is accurate and reliable. We have to believe the facts we see, no matter if it feels uncomfortable to us. We can use the truth sandwich method to not only disprove a claim, but also shift the narrative to the truth by adding additional context to the claim. George Lakoff, former professor of cognitive sciences and linguistics at the University of California, Berkeley, stated, quote, refuting a lie repeats and then therefore amplifies the lie. Like telling someone not to think of an elephant forces that person to think of an elephant. I suggest what I call a truth sandwich. When refuting a lie, start with the truth. The first frame gets the advantage. Indicate the lie, but avoid amplifying the specific language, if possible. Return to the truth. Always repeat the truth more than the lies. For example, here is how to respond to the lie that Poland attacked Russia, unquote. Truth, quote, on September 17, 1939, the Soviet Union invaded Poland. It was an unprovoked attack, unquote. Lie, quote, Putin wants to rewrite history. When Russia was the aggressor, Putin has attempted to cast Russia as the victim, unquote. Truth, quote, in fact, Russia invaded and attacked Poland, unquote. As you can see here, using the truth sandwich allows you to use your power to reframe the narrative into the truth by simply explaining what the truth is, what the lie is in general language, and reaffirming the truth. Keep repeating the truth as much as you can so people will remember the truth instead of the lie. For institutions, we need to be institutionalists. Even if our institutions are flawed, it is because our institutions are made up of human beings and people are imperfect. We strive to improve our institutions just as we strive to improve our laws. When our institutions are under attack, we must defend them. This is especially important when bad actors use disinformation tactics to sow doubts in our institutions that keep our country running. Remember, democracy is impossible without institutions since they give people ways to civically participate in our society. Again, there are ways we can improve our institutions, but it is good we want to improve them because it shows we care about them and value their importance. So, as well as want the best from them. In fact, we can use institutions to establish the truth. Those seeking to undermine the truth understand how to exploit the institutions of democracy to undermine democracy. For the First Amendment, people do have this right to state their opinions, but it does not allow people to cause harm to others by defaming them. Defamation is the act of harming the reputation of another by making a false statement to a third party. It can be verbal or written. Libel is a defamatory statement in a permanent media, such as a publication or newspaper. With these things in mind, defamation lawsuits are one way to use the courts to fight back against lies. Here's an example of this. The parents of children killed in the Sandy Hook massacre brought a class action lawsuit against Alex Jones, who made defamatory statements that harmed the families' reputations and endangered their lives. As a result, the families received death threats and are no longer able to live their lives in peace. The defense said that Alex Jones admitted that the shooting did occur, but the defense contended that his speech was rhetorical hyperbole. They said his statements were his personal opinion and were not defamation. The court found that Alex Jones defamed the plaintiffs when he accused them of perpetuating a hoax. Alex Jones was ordered to pay the plaintiffs $45.2 million in damages. This example shows that people whose reputation was negatively affected by disinformation can bring a lawsuit against a bad actor as a way to hold them accountable in the judicial system. Again, it is important to protect our institutions because we can use them to hold bad actors accountable. For social media, we have to regulate social media ads. To provide some context, regulate social media has become a right-wing talking point. But what they mean is, quote, how dare this social media platform tell me that I cannot say X, I have freedom of speech, unquote. Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook and Meta, stated, quote, I speak for Facebook. We do not fact check ads submitted by politicians, unquote. Keep in mind that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996 states that social media platforms cannot be sued if a user posts untrue material. The purpose was so that the owner of a social media platform was not forced to monitor all content from all users for accuracy. At the time, Facebook has interpreted this law to mean that they do not have a fact check. They do not have to fact check ads. If that interpretation is correct, then we should clarify Section 230 so that social media sites understand that whereas they do not have to monitor user content, they have a responsibility to monitor ads for which they accept money and for the content they solicit. After all, there is a difference between simply posting something and paying money for an ad to get actively promoted by a social media site across a platform. To be clear, this would be regulating ads to make sure they are factual, not regulating ads that express a certain opinion about someone or something. Ads would usually cite sources when they make claims that if an ad does not have any evidence and lies or gives out fake evidence, the ad should not be promoted across a social media platform. This is all about making sure the digital public sphere has true information being there. To strengthen our public sphere, there are 3 ideals we need to follow. 1, all arguments must be based on rational thinking. If an argument is proven wrong, it must be abandoned. 2, anyone who wants to participate should be allowed to engage. 3, in its most ideal state, the public sphere is an open marketplace for different ideas. Advancing these ideas strengthens the public sphere, which also strengthens democracy because we are all willing to have adequate civic dialogue in any space we go into. When it comes to democracy, the way to strengthen democracy is with more democracy. The more people who get involved and make democracy theirs, the stronger it will become. Here are some ways to achieve this. 1, make sure you are registered to vote and vote in every election, including local elections. 2, become a volunteer to get involved with your local elections. Volunteers monitor and manage polling places, oversee voting counting and tabulation, and conduct voter registration drives. 3, you can join civic organizations who are dedicated to advocating for your community. 4, if you do not like how things are done, do not just complain. Meet with your decision makers, run for public office, or help a political candidate get into public office who embody your values and priorities. There are many more options you can take, but the point is to get civically involved in your community in any way you can so you are exercising your political power. There will always be anti-democratic forces working to undermine the truth, rule of law, and democracy. We can fight for our democracy and combat disinformation when we are all civically engaged in our society. As we wrap up this video on combating disinformation, the most important takeaway is this. Defending truth is a shared responsibility. Disinformation spreads when people feel isolated, overwhelmed, or disengaged, but it loses its power when informed, thoughtful citizens work together to challenge it. Whether it is sharpening our online habits, supporting good quality journalism, strengthening our institutions, or getting civically involved, every action we take contributes to a healthier, more resilient democracy. We have seen how disinformation tactics are designed to confuse us and undermine our ability to think critically. But all of these tactics can lose their effectiveness when we use powerful tools outlined in this video to push the tactics back. Using those tools remind us that the truth does not defend itself. People defend it. Also, democracy survives when we show up for it. That means voting, volunteering, staying engaged, asking insightful questions, and standing up for facts even when they are uncomfortable. The more we civically participate, the harder it becomes for bad actors to distort reality or divide us. Disinformation is one of the biggest challenges of our time, but we are far from powerless. By remaining vigilant and committed to the truth, we each play a part in safeguarding our shared future of having accurate and reliable information. When we come together to uphold the facts, support our institutions, and protect democratic norms, we do not just stop the spread of disinformation, but also help build a stronger, more united society. In the next video, we will wrap up this video set series by providing a recap of what we talked about. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the post notifications so you will be notified when I post my next video. I appreciate your support. Remember, you are powerful, you are capable, and you are the changemaker our society needs. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you soon.